Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learnings. I'm honoured today to be in the company of Lucy Noonan from Atomic Consultancy, who has had years and years and years of experience in the property industry. I know she doesn't look that old. That's what you always say, and you're right. So who's had years of experience in the property industry, working for some exceptional agencies and businesses and learning on the way. And Lucy's just set up a new consultancy, Atomic Consultancy, which is very exciting. And I'm very excited to say you had a fantastic January. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So well done you. Lovely start. So before we come on to Atomic Consultancy and talk about what you're doing now and how you're going to help loads of people and make a difference in acquisition and what they need to do. So tell us a little bit about Lucy and how you got into property in the first place.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Steve. It's great to see you as well. Like, we've known each other for years, haven't we?
Yes.
And I think you're the legend of the industry. People keep saying people are legends. And I think we're just all people that work hard. And I think there's a lot of people that have been around a lot. So, yeah, I started off as a weekend negotiator when I was at college. I worked for Hunters when they had just 6 offices. So I was doing the cricket tees for Kevin Hollinrake at the time. And he said, do you want a job in Easingwold branch, this little office north of York? And yeah, I just loved it. Went off to uni and worked at Hunters for about 3-4 years, doing various roles. And they opened their flagship office in Manchester. So it was their first office outside of Yorkshire. And at the ripe old age of 19, they gave me a Hunter's Mini, and I used to drive over to Manchester and bearing in mind I'm from a really rural village in York. They sent me and put me on Deansgate in Manchester, multi-million-pound apartments. I thought I'd made it. Like, it was just brilliant. And so, yeah, I got the bug. I dropped out of uni in my 3rd year and my last semester, much to the disgust of my parents. But basically there was that Countrywide used to run called a management development program. And it used to be like the creme de la creme. If you could get onto that program, it was brilliant. And it was like, I was actually talking to Ian Preston, who at the time was the area director now of Preston and Baker, but he was my area director at Countrywide. And I was saying, do you remember the recruitment day that we had in Harrogate? And it was like, there was about 100 people in this room, and they did all these different like competency-based tests and things. Then they split the room in half, and then half the room got told. It was like the X Factor. I genuinely thought I'd won the lottery. I had to have 3 interviews. I look back now, I think I was on a 9 grand basic. I mean, the commissions were great, but you know, it was that 10 MAs, 2 FS appointments. 10 viewings, 2 valuations, 2 FS, and you had to constantly hit that to stay on this management development program. But it gave me such a good grounding. And then at the age of 21, I had my first branch. So I was a branch manager. So I was at Countrywide for a few years. And then went to work various different roles. I was embarrassingly, someone came up to me at the EA Masters last year and said, "You're the girl on the back of the bus." And I used to work for an independent agent called Smiles All Round Estate Agents. Yes, that was the name, Smiles All Round. And yeah, so went into lettings. So I'd predominantly just an estate agency up till that point. So then went into lettings and grew their lettings portfolio. And then, yeah, just where we met was I was the operations director at Belvoir. And launched a estate agency as a product offering there. So got franchising, and then LSL for 5 years, working in acquisitions. So that's where kind of in the last 6-7 years, that's where kind of I really found my niche and something that I was really passionate about. So I've done acquisitions for Your Move, Reeds Rains, and then LSLI with Greg Young and Marsh and Parsons and Intercounty, etc. And then had an amazing opportunity so I got made redundant from LSL. And then 3 weeks later, John Cook and Josh Rayner, and again, everyone knows everybody. And so I got an amazing opportunity to go and work with Will Lindley as their head of acquisitions for the Lohman Group, and I was their very first employee on the new merger of the Lohman Group. So Lohman and obviously Lindley and Simpson merged on the 1st of December, I think it was, and I was their very first kind of new employee. So yeah, last year we did 21 acquisitions.
Wow.
And it was just brilliant. It was, I've got a huge amount of respect for Will and the team at Lohman's. They're, great group of people. But I've always had a passion in acquisitions to help independent agents to grow via acquisition. Because I've now worked for two of the biggest buyers, I kind of understand how buyers approach an acquisition. And a big part of my role is helping the sellers through that process. So I didn't want to just be seen as a traditional broker, because there's some, good ones out there, but also wanted to help people through the whole journey. And I think I'd seen quite a lot of people launch their own, like yourself. There's lots of other people that have launched recently, and I just thought, if I don't do it now, I'm going to regret it. So yeah, it was a massive step. I was, some people thought I was absolutely mad because what Lohman, we were doing so many, and I was just like, no, I want to do it the Noonan way. And touch wood, it's going really well. The month of January, we've just completed on 3 acquisitions. I can't obviously say who they are because it's not been announced yet, but 2 of my clients have never done an acquisition before, and that's where I get really passionate, because I was really able to help them through that process. And also working for a big corporate, I've not been able to do other things that I'm passionate about. So I'm really passionate about helping women in a estate agency. I'm absolutely, very passionate about agents together, and I was wanting to give some of my time to things that I'm most passionate about as well. So obviously launching on my own, I don't have to ask someone, is it okay for me to come and have a 45-minute chat with Stephen Brown? I can just do it now. I can go and meet someone for a coffee. Not that I do. I did think this amazing world would be, I'd have a really great quality of life. And I think I've never worked so hard in all my life. I am knackered. But it's my choice, and I'm really enjoying it. But I think I was a bit naive when I launched in October, because obviously all the companies I've worked for, they have a marketing department, they have an accounts department. I had a project team, and now all of a sudden I've got to do my own invoices, and I've got to, do my own marketing, and I've got to do, and I was just like, I'm just going to do acquisitions. So yeah, I was talking to Matt Giggs about it last week, and I was just like, totally forgotten that you actually have to do everything. So yeah, that's probably one of my top tips, is if you are going to launch, just remember you've got to do everything, not just the bit you enjoy.
That is very true. Right. Amazing. So thank you for sharing all of that. There is so much there to unpack. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning, because we've got people on here that are watching that may be just getting into estate agency or just starting lettings. We've got some who obviously are very experienced. Some may be branch managers, some are business owners. So you've got a real mix to help loads of different people today, which is going to be absolutely fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. Congratulations on your 3 acquisitions in January. What a fantastic start to a new business. It's brilliant. So let's go back to Hunters and Countrywide. And I know you said Countrywide, they had amazing training. So what stood out? What lessons did you learn from coming into the industry that really, really helped you, that has helped you get to where you are today?
It's interesting, actually, because Agents Together had asked me to do a video the other day as well about, managing your time and things. And I think starting off early in my career, I had really good foundations. So I think the training that I was given, particularly at Countrywide, was, phenomenal. It was the basics. And there was a thing called, I don't know if you remember, it was called an NPO, a Negotiator's Personal Organizer. It was we didn't have computers on our desks. We had a hot box. You were only allowed to have 10 hot buyers in your box at any one time. And literally, my branch manager would sit there and he'd chuck the cards out if I wasn't, it was a true estate agency, like back in the day, where you were constantly ringing, or doing previewings. Like, I spoke to an agent the other day and they didn't even know what that was. And I was like, that was a standard thing at Countrywide. If a valuer was going out to do an MA, we had to get 4 viewings ready so that valuer could sit in front of that person and say, look, I've got these 4 people that can view your house in 48 hours. And that helped the instruction. So, it was really intense, but you know what? I look back at my Countrywide days and just absolutely loved it. We worked hard and we played hard. Gosh, the amount, we were like, we'd finish work at like 7, go out, I'd be home at maybe after midnight, and we were back in the office again at 8 a.m, back on it. Sausage roll from Thomas the Baker, and we were back selling houses. It was brilliant. It was just, I bought my first house at 21 with a friend also that worked at Countrywide. I'd never get it now because obviously they took all of our commission into account. But yeah, I think for me, I'm quite a competitive person naturally. So estate agency just really fitted me well. If that phone rang, everybody was like grabbing the phone because it could have been a valuation and we've got a target to meet. Ringing the bell, it was just, if you sold a house, it was just a really great time. But the training that we had, it was, very regimented. And I think sometimes, the customer service side of things as well, we were always focused on the sales element. So I think from learning and having that corporate structure initially, that did then help me when I went into independent agents and other parts of my career, because that gave me the foundation. But then actually that human side, I think as well, sometimes could get missed. And I identified with that quite a bit.
Okay, so I like the smile on the back of a bus. So being a letting agent. Well, in fact, I want to come back actually. So you were branch manager when you were 21. So managing people that were potentially older than you, what lessons did you learn there?
Yeah, so interestingly, a lot of the people that I've recruited over the years have always been older than me. And I think for me, it's not about age or gender or it's about who's right for that role, and creating a team and fostering a team where everybody's skill set complements each other. Then you can create a really great ethos and create a great team. But yeah, most of the people that were working for me at that time were older than me. And I did struggle when I was 21. Like, I do look back now and I think I probably rocked up with a bit of a chip on my shoulder. You've got to go out canvassing in the rain, regardless, because, I'm the branch manager. But, I've learned now through the years that I don't particularly enjoy managing people, if I'm totally honest, Stephen. It's not something that now, obviously, working in acquisitions, and when I was the teams of acquisitions, is very different because we're project managers and there's accountants and lots of different things. And to me, my management style is very much, we're a team. So I'm not really kind of an autocratic, like you've got to deliver these results to hit the thing. It's more about how as a team can we approach this and get the best result for everybody. But yeah, it's I think managing teams at a young age, I struggled with, but I've never really looked at someone and thought, oh, they're older than me, or probably more, I'd see it in a gender perspective rather than an age perspective. So I'd actually be more, not threatened's probably the wrong word, but I would be more nervous about going into a room where someone was a senior woman rather than a senior man. Because at that point, there was hardly any senior. So actually, I actually found it was really nerve-wracking, and I was in awe of these women that, were at the top of their game. I'd find that more challenging actually than the age difference. I think, now there is a lot more women, coming through the ranks that have got that experience. But age for me was, I think you can be an 18-year-old brilliant manager, or you can be a 60-year-old terrible manager. I think it's the skills and the way that you approach it that affects that.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about women in property then, which you're very passionate about, that I can tell. So there are quite a few groups now that have popped up with women in property that are helping each other. So for people that are watching this, women in property, how do they find out about it? What are you talking about? I dread to ask that question, but what are you talking about? Why do you think there is, not enough women in senior positions? And what can people do and people to change it and get involved?
So I think for me, I think that there is some groups coming up, and there is this debate around more females in the industry, more women in prominent positions. But for me, and this is my personal opinion, is I just don't want to say that we're women in a state agency. We're just professionals in the industry, and kind of changing the whole gender conversation that there's not enough women on the panel. Well, it's the right professional people on that panel, because sometimes a role will be right for a male, and it's not about the male perspective or the female perspective. But I do think females and women, we approach things in a different way. We've got a different way of managing pressure, and I personally think we're very good at problem solving, because just this morning I've got to drop my daughter off, I've got a conference call 15 minutes later, my mother-in-law's coming for dinner. There's all these things that you've got to juggle, as well as trying to broker some acquisitions today. So I think we are really, women, we do juggle a lot. But there's a brilliant Facebook group, so any women that are watching, and you can only be a woman to join. So sorry, Stephen. Chris Watkin has also asked if you could join. I'm like, you're not a woman. But it's Women in a State Agency. I think there's about 900 members now on the group, and it's a brilliant, safe place where women can just ask questions. So there's loads of referrals of business, how to do things. And we talk about things as well that is challenging for us. So pregnancy and working through that, menopause, there was something on that last week. And these are subjects that are specific to women. I when I was pregnant, I was at Belvoir, and, navigating that, and, in a very kind of, traditional organization. And, a lot of us are going through that. So having that support network is great. And there's some brilliant people a part of that group, and I think sometimes we see a lot of male MDs and a lot of male senior positions, but there's actually loads of, Helen Book, she's the CEO of a state agency at LSL, Glynis Frew, MD of Hunters, Ellie Hall, one of my friends, MD of, Martin and Co. There's loads, Philippa Leggett, there's so many amazing senior women that, so I don't think that actually there is some great people, but I think sometimes they're not asked, or are not as vocal maybe. But I'm really proud to be in this industry. And 20 years ago, there wasn't the women at those kind of levels. I think it's totally changed. I can, pick up the phone to some senior people in the industry, both male and both female, and be treated with the respect now. Whereas I think 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So I do think we've come a massive way.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So I know you're incredibly passionate about Agents Together, and you do you're the most incredible ambassador. And I, for one, are incredibly grateful for your involvement as a mentor and for being an incredible ambassador and what you do. So thank you so much. What made you get involved in becoming a mentor, and how do you think it's helping the mentees as well?
So I'm going to be, it's quite a personal reason actually of why I initially decided to, well, I found out about Agents Together. So I became involved about a year ago. And when I said I was at Countrywide, I met my best friend at Countrywide, a girl called Alana Roberts. We were both negotiators. And unfortunately, just over a year ago, she lost her fight through mental health. So she was my maid of honour, godmother to my daughter. You would look at her and, you know, she got everything together. You know, she was, you know, had her own house, brilliant car, great job, but she really suffered with her mental health. And it was a massive, massive shock. And it's still even, you know, today it's still only a year ago, and it's been a very difficult thing for me and my family and friends and people in the industry that knew her as well, to go through that. And then my brother's best friend as well, a guy called Charlie Lancaster, a great estate agency in York called Lancaster and Sams. Fortunately, Charlie, same age as me, 37 as well, unfortunately lost his fight to mental health. So in the space of 18 months, I lost two really close people to me, both similar ages, both really professional, and both in the estate agency sector. And I genuinely was like, you know, there wasn't an outlet, there wasn't a support, or there wasn't someone to mentor or to help to have that conversation with. So when I saw Agents Together, I was like, I feel like this is my time to not just give something back, but also I need to have to be mentored, and I would have never have launched Atomic Consultancy in October if it wasn't for Agents Together. And that's 100% true, because my mentor really challenged me and said to me, what is it that you really want to achieve in life? What are your aspirations? And taking that time that, you know, out, I mean, I ended up with, well, they're still my mentor now, you know, over a year on, which is great, you know, that they're giving up their time. But I also wanted to help people that were younger or were struggling as well, to just have that outlet, to just speak to somebody that I didn't know their company or their dynamics, but just being able to say, you know, look, I've been in your situation and I know how you feel, and have you thought about it this way? You know, I'm not a professional coach or anything, but just being able to, I think, not just give back, but also help the industry and help the young people coming through, and the old generation, regardless of where you are in, you know, in your career. But for me, Agents Together, I genuinely think that if this had been around, you know, 5-6 years ago, I think, you know, would my friends still be here? I don't know. But, you know, having that outlet and that support, I think in Agents Together is just, is phenomenal. And it'll always be something to me now that I'm passionate about, and I will want to always dedicate quite a lot of my time to, because I don't want it to happen to other people. And I think there's some great people that are coming together with Agents Together to help to support the industry and make it a better place.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your really personal story. So
yeah, sorry, it is, and I get a bit like when I say it, because it's hard to talk about. You know, it's really hard.
It's almost a year anniversary of Sam's passing, so it doesn't take a lot for me to shed tears, and I'm almost in tears now. By listening to your story. But
it's hard, you know, to go to your best friend's funeral at 37, to know that as well she took a life, was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I have to say, when I was at the Lohman Group, they were brilliant support to me. But do you know what, Stephen? It was hard. And I think sometimes people see people like us, and there's something that said today, oh, you're a legend. I'm not a legend at all. I've just worked hard, and I want to be nice in the industry, and I want to care. You know, I don't want to be this type of person that just ignores people. I remember that myself going into meetings, and I think there's a real opportunity to help the industry, and for us to not have this stigma that we're, you know, tanned, pinstripe suit people that don't care about people, because actually there's a lot of people in the industry that isn't like that, and we're wanting to change perception. But, you know, it's hard being an estate agent or anything in the estate agency industry. You know, if you've not hit your targets, it can be demoralizing, demotivating, especially if you're remunerated by money and you've got money problems. you know, it is a hard industry to work in, you know, and mental health, I think we have this badge of mental health, but everybody struggles with mental health. You know, it's not just the strongest people, you know, or the weakest people that struggle, or the high achievers. Everybody will struggle from time to time with feeling low, with having anxiety, with feeling like they're not good enough, you know, anxious about going and doing training, like you said just before. You know, we're all, you know, we've all, and people think mental health, or, you know, but we all suffer from it in some shape or form. And that's what Agents Together is for me, I think, is being able to help have an outlet to people to say, yeah, do you know what? Sometimes I'm really anxious before I go in and do that valuation, and someone to go, really, you are? And it's like, yeah, we all suffer from it. We just sometimes have better coping mechanisms, or hide it better.
Spot on. And I think it's incredible. I think there's over 250 mentors that are giving up their time. There's over 450 odd mentees that have been helped. There's been over 14,000 hours of people's time that's been given up to help people. There's loads of incredible resources on the Agents Together website there to help people. So please, you know, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, if you know somebody that is suffering in silence, point them to Agents Together, because we all want to help. We all want to make a difference. We don't want people to suffer. And, you know I've had a counsellor over the last year. Just by talking to people, it makes a massive, massive, massive difference. It's a real help. So please don't suffer in silence. Speak to people, because we're all here to help you. So whatever it is, you know, it may be a little thing to you, but it doesn't matter, you know, how little it is. Please, you know, pick up the phone. We're here to help. We're here to make a difference. And, you know, the founder members and all the mentees do, and the trustees do a wonderful, wonderful job. It's incredible. So thank you for all of that. Let's talk about acquisitions. So you made a really interesting point before, and I just want to come back before I talk about acquisitions. You said I've had to learn that I've got to do everything by myself, and I've got to market myself and whatever. And actually, personal brand is really, really important. So what have you done to get your personal brand out there, to market yourself, to get yourself known into, you know, which obviously you've said, you know, there's some big players in this, you know, yeah. But you look like you're already a household name and everybody knows it because your marketing, because your marketing's been excellent. So, you know, I see you absolutely everywhere. You're talking at events, you're going on stages, you know, which is absolutely brilliant. You're putting yourself out there. So for a lot of people, and you mentioned that before, actually, a lot of people feel very uncomfortable doing things that are, you know, quite unnatural, like going on video, doing webinars, speaking in front of 200 people. So how do you get out of that comfort zone and feel uncomfortable? And what advice can you give people who, you know, again, there's going to be people who are self-employed or thinking about going down that model, to get their message out there?
So I think when I think it was the last time I saw you, actually, wasn't it? It was at FIACon, and I was asked to present. And I honestly don't think I had ever been more nervous. The last time I think I was that nervous was on the day of my wedding, which was nearly 10 years ago. I was stood in the break with a cup of tea, and the tea was pouring out the top. I had to put the tea down. It was totally out of my comfort zone. And I think I was more nervous, not about speaking in front of everybody. I was more nervous that I'm trying to do something a bit different in the acquisition space. And, you know, I was thinking, what if everybody thinks this is a really bad idea? I've just walked away from an amazing job. And I think it was that concern of, am I doing the right thing? But I think my business coach had prepped for it, and I've done a few training courses now through with Property Mark, so I'm starting to be a little bit easier, but it's still nerve-wracking, you know. Even coming on today, it's like, oh god. But my mentor just said to me, you just need to be you and be yourself. So if you do come across as a bit emotional, or you do say things and you a bit talk too fast, that's Lucy Noonan. And, you know, people will either love you or they won't. And, you know, and I think one thing that I definitely wasn't in my early career was myself. And I'm truly myself now. So, you know, the reason why I call Atomic Consultancy is because at the end of every acquisition, I go, boom. And that was why, not because of Atomic Kitten, like, because that's what a lot of people like to think of it was. It's not about that at all. So, sorry, can you hear my dog?
Yeah, that's fine. Mine will be joining in soon. So we have a nice doggy sing-along.
It's literally probably like my gusto delivery or something. She just
That's all right. You know it's for real. It's live. These things happens.
She'll stop in a minute. But yeah, I think one of the things that I've definitely been more of since joining Lomond and launching Atomic is I'm me. So, you know, my biggest thing is helping people through the acquisition process, and also supporting, you know, everybody. And I think I've just genuinely been authentic to myself. And I think that's helped to create my brand, as it were.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So let's talk about booming, not booming. Booming.
No, booming. That's the Bruce Brothers. I mean, brilliant if my business would be worth that much, but it's not yet. But maybe one day. But no, Atomic.
So Atomic. Let's talk about Atomic and all those booms at the end of a month. That's going to keep on happening for you. So I'm a seller. Okay, what tips would you give me to get myself sale ready in order to sell my business?
Good question. So I think one of the main things that I think sellers don't get ready is their accounts. So I know that sounds like a really simple thing, but actually having you know where your income's coming from. So, you know, not just saying, oh, my turnover is 150,000, because as a buyer, they're going to want to know how that 150,000 is made up. So is it fully managed? Is it let only, rent collect? Do you have insurance products in there? So really actually looking at where your income is and being able to easily present that, because through the due diligence process and even through the offer stage, if you don't know the key numbers in your business, and you know, you need to know how much it's worth before you go out to sell. And I think probably another key tip that I support sellers to help do this, but they can do it themselves, is do some reverse due diligence on your own business as well. So, you know, there's some great companies out there that can go and do health checks. You know, make sure that you are compliant. Make sure that you've got your terms of business and your agency agreements all set up, because actually doing it now, you might get a bit more for it because it's a really nice wrapped up business. But also if there are any, you know, red herrings or issues that you're not, for example, doing the right AML checks, as an example, you can rectify that. So you're not going to have to stand behind extra indemnities and things. So I do think getting your accounts in order, doing a health check, and then probably, and that my last top tip would be looking at all of the costs that are associated with your business. And that's not just your supplier contracts and your lease and your fleet, but look at your staff costs as well. So I think of some of the businesses that I'm currently working on through acquisition is because staff costs now are higher, so it's difficult to recruit really good staff. But then if you've got, you know, 70% of your turnover, 70% of your cost is made up of staff, that's quite a concern. So you really need to look at all of your costs and see, actually, how can I operate, you know, effectively, but on a minimum basis? Because if you're selling it as what's called a share purchase, a buyer has to take all of that cost on. So if there's a lot in there, that will affect the price that, you know, a buyer will pay.
Okay. And is it just share purchases that people are doing, or are they paying up front? Or do they pay, here's some money now, money later? Do they keep the business owners on, or they're all?
So there's loads of different ways. So the two main ways of an acquisition is either they buy as an asset, or you can sell as a share purchase. So every buyer would love an asset, because an asset basically is they're just buying the portfolio and leaving all previous any risk and contracts and etc. behind. So that it literally is that and the staff. Whereas a share purchase, they're buying warts and all previous liabilities, contracts, etc. So every buyer wants to buy an asset, but every seller, pretty much the majority of the time, wants to sell as a share. Brilliant, isn't it, my job? But the reason why business sellers want to sell as a share is on an asset, there can potentially be double tax implications. So it can cost you a lot more. There are some creative ways, though, that you can do that. So I've got assets and shares currently that I'm working on, but there's management buyouts as well. So, you know, there can be lots of different ways to exit. You know, and you know, there's businesses that, you know, are equity funded to then grow via acquisition. So, you know, I'm helping to support one of those. So there's lots of different ways to either grow via acquisition or to exit. But I think making sure that you've got, you know, a good team around you that knows what the options are available to you, and structure that in the right way. But like you say, on most acquisitions, you wouldn't get 100% of the purchase price at completion. There's normally what's called a deferred element. So the buyer will retain some of the percentage of that for a period of time to make sure that what they've bought, the income's there. And that can be over a 6, 12, 3-year period. It really depends on the size. I try and keep things simple. But, you know, the larger the acquisition, the more complex it is that, you know, they can be.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to give your contact details in a bit, because I think anybody who's looking at the acquisition side, whether it's buying or selling, you definitely need a professional to help you. And Lucy is definitely a professional and trusted advisor. But before I come and ask you that, your self-learning and your self-development, what do you do to learn? Have you got any podcasts that you listen to that you recommend to anybody watching or listening, or any books that will make a difference for people's self-development, please?
Yeah, so I listen to what's called Acquisition Strategies, a podcast. It's based in Chicago. I know it sounds so, but they're hilarious. But they buy multi-million-pound businesses. So very much the industry that I'm in and I've always been in is this industry. But actually learning about acquisitions in different sectors has been really good for my development. And so, yeah, if anyone's really excited about wanting to understand more about acquisitions, go and speak to the guy, watch this podcast. I also watch, I think a lot of people, the Diaries of the CEO.
Stephen Bartlett.
I was listening to the lady that is from Ann Summers the other day. I don't know if you've watched that one. Listen to that one. This woman's been shot at. It's just, but an amazing entrepreneurial woman. You know, she basically initially did Tupperware, but underwear in London. And Ann Summers is now this multi-billion-pound business. You know, she came out of school with no qualifications. So that is a brilliant, brilliant podcast. And there's loads of people on there that I've listened to, like the Moonpig founder and all sorts of things. So yeah, that's also really good to put on, I think, on in the car. And then my personal other development is I have a business coach. So I don't just have a mentor. I also have an NLP coach that I meet with fortnightly, virtually. So I found it's an essential part of my investment now is having a business coach. I never really kind of saw the benefits to that. And I also go and see a therapist once a month. She's a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
So I've been to go and see her now for the last 3-4 years. And I think I started to go and see her because I was really struggling with balancing and work, juggling everything. And I was feeling I was getting burnt out because I had a little girl, you know, she was only 1 or 2 years old. And then I've got this job, and I was finding it really difficult to sleep. I couldn't switch off. So working with this therapist, initially I was like, I'm not telling anybody that I go to a therapist because it sounds like I'm a failure. But do you know what? It's brilliant. I now go in every month and I literally just lie there because I know that she's going to hypnotize me and I'm going to have the best 45 minutes and come out feeling really rejuvenated and motivated. And I have the best night's sleep. If I could afford her every week, I would, but I can't. But yeah, hypnotherapy, I never, ever, I always said the first time I had it, I said, you won't be able to hypnotize me. And I literally was like, you won't hypnotize me. You won't hypnotize me. And then I woke up and I was like, oh, so was that 5 minutes? She was like, no, it's 40 minutes. It's incredible. Incredible. So that's how I, in terms of investment, is I really do value now people that can support you via therapy, coaching, mentoring. It's, I think in the last 3-4 years, I've really got it. And whereas before I thought by getting help, you were seen as a negative, and actually it's the complete opposite. I'm really proud that I've got all of these people to help support me to be the version that I am today. I've still got a long way to go, but you know, nobody's perfect and everybody can you know, improve. And I'm an overthinker, so having someone to help me think in a more strategic and logical way has been brilliant for me. Really good.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing all of those. So how do people get hold of you, Lucy?
Well, LinkedIn's easy. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, which everyone says. So yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Or my email is lucy@atomicconsultancy.com. Or you can call me on my mobile. I have got a landline, but I don't really use it because it still rings through to my mobile. So, but apparently it looks good if you've got a landline, I was told. So yeah, I don't know my landline, but my mobile's 0777 543 7697.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks very much for being a wonderful guest. I'm really grateful of your time because I know you're running in between meetings. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Please, if you enjoy it, like it, share it, rate it. On Thursday, I'm going to be joined by Jim Parker from 5 Properties in Scotland, which is actually pre-recorded. So if you expect comments on Thursday, you're not going to get any replies. But that was a great conversation we had. And it's one well worth tuning into. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching or listening. And Lucy, thank you for being a wonderful guest. Bye all.